And I'll tell you, Patrick, even from the time I came into this office, it was, Elon and his team were extremely helpful to me. They helped me identify that some of my own employees in my department had downloaded software on my phone and my laptop to spy on me.
Stop it.
To record our meetings.
Wow.
They had done that to several of the politicals.
Wow.
And so we ended up bringing in people, and that was something that if you didn't have those technology experts here in the department looking at all of our laptops and our phones and recognizing that kind of software, it would still be happening today.
Kristi Noem is making headlines again, but no, it's never for anything good. She said there that she was being spied on by members of the department that she now heads up, and if it wasn't for Elon Musk, she never would have known about it. The question has to be, who told these DHS employees to spy on their new director? Where did that order or initiative come from? Also, of course, no evidence has been provided to back up Noem's claim, but she does offer an explanation as to why it might have happened.
The backwards thinking of protecting our country was extremely detrimental to keeping us safe. And many times the deep state, I think what I tell people most of the time is I always believed when people talked about the deep state before that it existed. I never would have dreamed that it was as bad as it is. I'm still every day trying to dig out people who don't love America, that not just work at this department, but also work throughout the federal government.
She also said, "We have to sweep my office on a regular basis to make sure that there's not listening devices in it." It was very prevalent, and I think that what happened at this department was individuals had gotten away with, for years, spying on people who were politically appointed and trying to stop an administration that was coming in and trying to fix this country and keep us safe. So the deep state is operating within our government, and sure, I'm not going to dispute that, because if there is truly a deep state, however one chooses to even define the deep state, it most certainly is operating within our government. But Kristi Noem is attempting, I think, to portray herself as something of a victim. She's just a woman doing her best to do a job to protect these United States and to eradicate all unpatriotism. But now it's being reported that Noem is likely on her way out of this job that she inhabits, and once that happens, they're just going to replace her with someone worse. So really, I wouldn't get too excited about any of that, and I do think that that's a reasonable assumption to make, especially when you read that Noem allegedly got the job in the first place because she admitted herself to being an absolutely terrible and heartless person. She shot her dog. In her new book, NBC News reporter Julia Ainsley claims that it is precisely because Noem shot her dog and wrote about it that she got her job heading up ICE. Ainsley's book, as seen by The Atlantic, reports that many observers believed the outrage and humiliation after the shooting would terminate her chance of scoring a post in the Trump administration. However, the book reveals that Trump actually saw this particular biographical detail as an asset in his Homeland Security secretary. It was one of the reasons he chose her, according to the magazine. Let's just chat for a little bit. I was watching something the other day, and an author was talking about the book that he had written. The book was Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, the same guy who wrote The Martian, which you might have read or seen the movie. And I promise I'm not going to give any spoilers away. Honestly, you're going to get more spoilers if you just watch the trailer for the movie. But if you haven't read the book, it's about an existential threat against our planet. So the characters have to figure out a way to save our planet and protect humanity. They come up with a plan, but it is an incredible long shot, hence the title, Project Hail Mary. So the story is told on two separate fronts. There is what's happening in the present out in space, and then there are also flashbacks to what happened on Earth before the space expedition to get to the point to where our protagonist is now in space. And what is notably missing from the narrative is what is happening on Earth while the protagonist is in space. And if I remember correctly, because it's been a minute since I read the book, there's little to no communication between the space mission and Earth, or the communication is incredibly delayed. So we as readers have no idea what is happening at home while the space mission is maybe saving our planet. So whatever the space mission achieves or doesn't achieve won't be readily known by the people on Earth. So either our planet will freeze over and die one day, or it won't. So humanity is, in the meantime, operating under a very direct and acute existential crisis. And so humanity is expected to be operating at its absolute primal worst as the mission is happening, while at the same time, we're also supposed to be desperate for the survival of humanity. And in the book, the one thing that made the space mission possible at all was an incredible and unprecedented level of global human cooperation. There was an external threat against all of us, not in the sense that like corporations are burning through all of our natural resources, but a truly external threat that no human had any part in. However, we've seen movies and read books where external threats from space or wherever still don't foster that level of cooperation here on Earth. In the book, the woman who facilitated the collective effort to put the mission together had to break all kinds of international laws to do so, and it's assumed or understood that once the mission is active, she will be prosecuted for essentially trying to save the planet. Incredible sacrifices had to be made for the mission to even get off the ground, sacrifices that if the mission is successful and we save this planet, it would be very difficult for the planet to bounce back from. But at least if the mission was successful, which is a huge if throughout the book, we would at least have the opportunity to bounce back. We would get to make that call for ourselves because humanity will have been saved. So at once, you see the best of humanity, but it constantly has to work in spite of the worst of humanity. And the only way it's able to do that is because they believe in something that feels impossible, but like might be possible. It's the only hope they've got, so they put literally everything they have into it. I had a few experiences just within the last week alone, like 3 separate offline experiences that I can think of, where I was reminded that despite polling showing incredibly low approval numbers for Trump and people leaving the MAGA movement and protests around the country and around the world against this administration, etc., there are still so many people who adamantly support this president and this administration. There are still people spreading misinformation that they saw on Facebook as fact. There are still people who are incredulous as to why anyone wouldn't like that they support a man like Trump. And yes, there are still people who 10 years into this insane reality aren't getting it or don't want to get it. And I bring all of this up because the author, Andy Weir, he made a point that I think we could all stand to hear. I'm obviously paraphrasing because I don't have access to the direct quote anymore, but basically he was talking about hope. He was saying that humanity is good and is hopeful, so much so that whenever someone behaves badly, that becomes the headline because it's not the norm. It's a story that people are terrible because people are naturally good. The evil is the deviation from humanity. It's not our core humanity. So if the headlines get you down, I don't know, like maybe that'll make you feel a tiny bit better, even if it feels dangerously optimistic. Reality is what we believe it to be, so we're constantly trying to balance staying informed and staying grounded in whatever reality even is. And the truth is, reality is different for each and every one of us. But if we can at least stay rooted in fact, actual fact, not like fact, and empathy, it sounds simple, but I think it could go a long way. And this is a small tangent to end with, but all of that to say, we need to be reading more books, especially fiction. Nonfiction is great. I would never dissuade anyone from consuming nonfiction, but stories really matter. There is a reason why nuanced, non-black and white thinking and true empathy is so rare these days. And I really believe it's because we're not reading fiction anymore. I don't want to live in a world where the youngest generation no longer consumes what they are now referring to as plot-based media. And I don't want to live in a world where a classic and celebrated novel, like for example Wuthering Heights, is dumbed down to its basest form, with its major themes either misrepresented or entirely missing from the movie version, all because it's more fun and less controversial and easier for distracted consumption. I don't want any of it, and trust me, you don't either. All right, that's it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Thanks.